Hi guys, it's Caitlin, and today I am here to review Rebel of the Sands by Alwyn Hamilton. This review is going to be broken up into two parts. The first part is going to be spoiler-free, and the second part will have spoilers in it, and I will go ahead and let you know when the spoiler part is about to begin. So even if you have not read this book, you will be perfectly fine watching the first part of this video. This book follows a girl named Amani who lives in this magical desert. There are some very strong Arabic/Muslim influences in the way they dress and kind of the atmosphere and the way that they worship their gods. There is a very definite Old Western feel, at least initially in this book, and it's a world in which Amani is kind of doomed because she is poor, she is an orphan, and she is a female. Amani lives in a town called Dustwalk, which is basically one of the worst towns you can live in. It's in the middle of the desert. Everybody there is poor. They have very limited access to water. There are few jobs, and the jobs that do exist are very, very dangerous. Amani is desperate to get out of this town ever since she overheard her uncle essentially saying that he wasn't going to marry her off. He was planning to make her one of his wives. Since then, she has been stealing money to try to find a way to leave the town of Dustwalk and go to the capital of the country where her aunt lives and where she and her mother always talked about running away to till her mother was hanged. This story begins as Amani goes to the most nearby town, which is essentially just a bar and brothel district, to compete in this shooting contest, and if she wins, she is going to win what is essentially $1,000. While she's there, she meets this foreign boy, and she finds her life a little bit more complicated than she intended. I actually discovered this book on Facebook when the publisher posted a photo of the cover, which obviously is absolutely stunning. Look at how gorgeous this is. And they posted it with the caption consisting of the first two chapters of the story. I read the first two chapters, I was hooked, and I absolutely had to have it. It otherwise honestly would not have been on my radar because even though the cover is gorgeous, the title is kind of a little off-putting for me. Even now, I haven't read the synopsis, so I couldn't tell you if that would have appealed to me. Overall, like I said, I loved this book. I loved the characters that we got to meet. I loved the adventures. I loved the atmosphere. It was all just very, very engrossing, very vivid. It was very fast-paced. I fell in love with all of the characters we really got to know. I just really loved the story. I loved the setting. Everything about it was just extraordinary until we get to the end, and I honestly don't know if the ending is just me or if the ending is something that will bother other people. I don't want to give too much away, but just know that one of the things that tends to kind of drop my enjoyment of the story is if characters have been essentially traveling alone or just in a pair, and then they suddenly go someplace where one of the characters knows everybody and the other character has to suddenly try to acclimate. And that is kind of something similar to what happened in this story. So I think that is the reason that I didn't enjoy the final little bit of this book. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I will be continuing on with the series. The only thing that I can actually say concretely that I really wish had been done differently is I really wish that the articles of clothing had been described a little bit better, or there had been a glossary at the back of the book, because for me, she just kind of called the articles of clothing by name, and I had no idea what they were. I believe that they are probably more assumed with Muslim culture, and while I am familiar with a little bit of it, I don't really know too much about like their attire. And even when I Googled some of the articles of clothing, I wasn't able to find most of it. I think out of all the different types of clothing that are mentioned by name, I was only ever able to figure out what two of them were. One of them just from the way it was described in the book, and the second one because I was able to find an image of it on Google. But the rest of it, I still have no idea what it is. I highly recommend this book. I'd give it 4 out of 5 stars. It is a great first installment into a series, a trilogy, I'm not really sure. It's only 320 pages long, but so much happens. It's very fast-paced, yes, but you don't feel like you're shorted when you're reading this book. So that is the end of the spoiler-free section of this video. Thank you so much for watching this portion. If you haven't read this book, go ahead, go out to the library or to the bookstore, pick it up, read it, then come back and we can discuss it more. I really loved Jin. I really loved like the magic of it. I loved hearing about the history, and I liked kind of exploring the concept of a world in which women have no value, like even less value than any other world I've ever read about. I'm sure that this is actually more realistic in other countries and in other sections of the world than I'm familiar with. But as far as fiction goes in the books that I've read, with the exception of actual literary fiction from like Khaled Hosseini, who wrote like A Thousand Splendid Suns and The Kite Runner, this is the most exposure I've ever had to a world in which women literally have no value, not even as like pawns. So I really enjoyed that aspect. I loved kind of learning about it and feeling that sense of frustration and impotent rage along with Amani. I really loved it when she met Jin, when she was in Deadshot. I loved the actual competition setting. I loved learning a little bit about the history of the Rebel Prince. It was a little bit confusing to me because the way that the story had kind of spread and the way it was kind of initially told, it made it sound like this rebellion and the Rebel Prince incident had been going on for like years, but it had happened like less than a year ago. And so I was kind of confused by that initially, and at the same time, it didn't really feel like enough time had passed for it to become that legendary. I really loved when she came back to Dustwalk and she was in the shop and Jin shows up and she protects him. And the entire time the commander first shows up, she sits there and she kind of just like walks around the truth, and I had no idea that that was actually going to be important. I just was kind of wondering the entire time, why is she having this like battle of wits with this man instead of just saying, nope, haven't seen him. I was very, very upset when Jin took off when she was out trying to capture the Baraki. I thought that he was going to be gone for a while and she was going to have to go on her own and run into him later, because I was like, there's no way this guy isn't going to show back up. I like that we were introduced to Norsham in that very first interaction with the commander. I feel like I should have known a little better that he was going to be important later on, but I was just kind of thinking that it was an indication that the commander was going to have some kind of issues with his lack of control over his men. I was very, very sad though when she left Tamid behind, when she didn't even check to see if he was okay, and she's like, oh, he is dead. And that is one thing that kind of bothered me throughout the book. Like, to her, as soon as someone was out of sight, they were dead. And it wasn't just like dead to her. She was like, I have to go, they're dead. Like, you haven't even looked at this person. What injury would have contributed to their death? Because they were alive, and all of a sudden you're like, I gotta get out of here, they're dead. Like, what are you doing, Amani? Like, seriously? And then when she and Jin are traveling, and he tells her that he's not going to Isman, and she just wants all of his things, so she, like, puts the pain pills in his drink, and so he like passes out, and then she takes all of his stuff and she runs away to that town with the train, and she buys a first class ticket. I still don't understand why she bought a first class ticket, and I kind of felt like maybe she didn't know why she bought a first class ticket, but that's not the decision I would have made. And then when she runs into her cousin Shira, and Shira just totally betrays her. Like, I want to know why Shira is like this, and I don't understand, because that's something that does bother me a little bit in YA. It didn't used to until a lot of people started pointing it out as a trope, and that's the mean girl is mean for no good reason trope. And I really want there to be a reason when someone's just a total bitch all the time. Like, at least it could have been like an argument or like a battle for power. Maybe she was jealous of Amani coming into her home and taking up some of her space. I don't really know why she would have initially been jealous and rude to Amani though, and I wish that was something that was kind of explored or explained a little bit better. But I did think that it was a great way to kind of kick the story off once she got on the train, so that she would have a reason to run. And then when she ran into Jin again at the back of the train, when she jumped across that gap between the cars, I loved it. I loved the part where she just like was looking around, the commander and the soldiers were coming, and she just grabbed him and yanked him to her and kissed him. And then I've started to wonder since though, when you find out that she can't lie, like, would that kiss have otherwise counted as a lie? Like, I don't know if it's only they can't lie verbally, or if it's like they can't do anything really truly dishonest. Like, she'd already been attracted to him, and obviously he was attracted to her, and they had all this like heat between them. And then they jump off the car. And then there's that scene where they're wandering through the desert afterward, and they see this like figure just like walking through the sand, but then when they like peek over the ridge, the figure's just gone. Was that supposed to be important, or was it just something that happened? Was it a mirage? Was it like a skinwalker? Like, I want to know what the importance of that scene was. Like, I feel like there was a reason. At no other point are we really shown these creatures or these monsters in the desert without them being there for a reason. We're never really introduced to any characters for no good reason. Like, all of them have a purpose to being introduced into the story. And so now I'm kind of wondering if that one does as well, or if it's just like the one situation in the entire book that didn't have a purpose. Then they spend all this time traveling to this town so that they can meet up with a bunch of merchant parties where they can volunteer their services as mercenaries to assist them in getting across the desert protected, while also getting paid and having a way to have enough resources to cross the desert themselves so that they can get on to Isman. And the entire time, Jin is just telling her over and over, like, the desert is better. You don't want to go to the city. The city is awful. Stay out of there. And I had no idea why he was saying that. Even now, I don't really understand. I think that she would have been fine in Isman. I thought that maybe he was just trying to get her to the rebel prince, but I'm not really sure, because like then it became clear he didn't want to take her to the rebel prince, and he gladly was going to let her go until she basically looked at him and was like, I don't want to go to Isman anymore. And then he was like kind of upset about it, but he was also kind of happy about it because that meant they got to be together some more. I really loved the time they spent traveling with the camel's knees. I really liked kind of the interactions. I liked watching kind of a little bit of the jealousy rear up in Amani's head as she was pretending to be this boy who was Jin's little brother. The daughter of the leader of the camel's knees was like kind of hitting on Jin, and it became very clear that a lot of them were like, maybe she should be married off to Jin. And then when they get to Dasami, and it's just demolished. Like all of it except this temple or the mosque or whatever it is in the middle has just been completely razed and burned to the ground. And so they have to go to Fahali. And the camel's knees didn't want to go to Fahali. They only wanted to continue on if they couldn't go through Dasami, but they didn't have enough supplies. And apparently they didn't want to go because they were smuggling like a tiny, tiny little bit of magic. And apparently that's illegal. It's just confusing to me. Dasami was destroyed because it had too many Galan soldiers living there, and the only actual laws against magic were being enforced by the Galan soldiers who were there due to their alliance with the Sultan of Miraji. So I don't really understand why it was okay to go to Dasami, but they didn't want to go to Fahali if Dasami was also ruled by the Galans and it was illegal to have magic according to the Galans. Their bags are searched by the Miraji soldiers and they're cleared to go through, and then the Galan soldiers show up and they're like, no, we're researching, and they just trash everything. They start like slashing saddles, and that's how they find the tiny bits of magic that were smuggled. And so the camel's knees are all just thrown into prison. Luckily, Jin and Amani had kind of separated from them, and they start this plan that they're going to go rescue them. So Amani finally stops dressing as a boy, goes in dressed as a girl to pretend that she's going to get water, but she doesn't even bring a basket, and she's just hoping no one looks at her. And then she goes into like this abandoned church thing, and that's when she runs into Norsham. She basically promises Norsham, if you tell me where the prison is, I'll rescue you. And then she and Jin come in with this plan, and they release all the Baraki. And she does that repeat thing where she's like, oh, he's dead. Like, what evidence is there to indicate that Norsham is dead? Like, she promised him that she was going to go save him if he told her where this was. And then she just leaves. She's like, he's dead. It's too late. Like, why do you think he's dead? Wasn't that technically lying? She promised him that she was going to come back and save him, and then she just didn't. And anyway, so then they rescue the camel's knees, and they, like, leave, and they get outside, and then they're attacked by nightmares. They're fighting them off, and all of a sudden, one of the members of the camel's knees like starts threatening her because her hood's come off and it's revealed that she's a girl. Jin is bitten by a nightmare. They just leave. So she ends up just like hauling him across the desert. And then we get to the part of the story I don't like, because I like the hauling him across the desert where he's still telling that story over and over of the Jin who fell in love with the girl, and then he gave her his true name so that she could open any lock, and then they are rescued by the rebel prince's encampment. And that's when you find out that Jin is the rebel prince's brother. I really stopped enjoying the story at that point, because then you find out, this is I think part of why I didn't like it, that Jin has been hiding his true identity from her the whole time, and that he's actually a prince himself. And then you find out that Amani is a Demji. And she had no idea she was a Demji. I was shocked by the fact that she was a Demji. I finally understood, why she could never lie, why she'd never lied the whole time. I was kind of with her in the whole anger towards Jin thing, and I liked the kind of awkwardness where he was still acting like they were friends and she was avoiding him because she was mad at him. But then once we get past the initial drama surrounding this, discovery and her finding this out, I honestly just kind of disliked it from there on out. I didn't want her to be a Demji. I just wanted her to be a normal girl who was really good at shooting guns. And then when she and Jin finally make up, Their relationship isn't the same as it was. It's like all of a sudden they're like very coupley, lovey-dovey, all over each other, very affectionate all the time. Instead of like this very good camaraderie where it's indicated that they have feelings for each other and it's acted upon, it's just all of a sudden such an abrupt change from it. It took away all the excitement of their interactions. Like all of a sudden he got a case of boring boyfriend syndrome. And then we find out that Norsham is still alive and he is the weapon, and they go to intercept the train, and she has another chance where she can save him or kill him if she just pulls him off the train before she jumps, because he doesn't want to hurt her. And instead she's just like, it's too late, and she just jumps off the train. At this point it became very clear Norsham is just going to keep coming back and coming back and coming back. He's not going to harm her because he likes her and they're friendly and everything, and he's going to keep forgiving her for being such an abandoning bitch. He's just going to keep coming back because she's just going to keep dropping him. Like, she's just going to keep finding excuses not to deal with Norsham so that he can keep coming back as a problem over and over again, because then they struggle through the desert and then they get to the city that is next on the list to be attacked. And then they sit there and they screw with them again. She discovers that her power is that she can turn sand into people and into a weapon. Why can't she just be good with guns? Like, why does she have to have this really lame power that I hate? People are shooting at her and she has like these sand people jumping in between them. Bullets can go through sand. It's just gonna like hit a sand person, go through the sand person, and hit her anyway. The rebel prince comes through because he senses that his brother's in trouble, so he tracks him with his compass, and he gets there, and there was no point in him showing up there. Like, it was completely unnecessary. It was just to add extra angst. And in the end, you know, everybody's killed. The Galan soldiers are mostly dead except for the ones who can go back to Gala and tell their ruler that the Sultan has betrayed them, so that the war can start as the characters wanted it to, between the Sultan and the Galan, instead of the Galans continuing to go after the Demji and the Miraji people. Norsham gets away again. And I was really disappointed in the ending. And I really wish it had just stuck to the same storyline and the same kind of storytelling as the initial 3/4 of the book. Overall, like I said, still like this book. Gonna continue on with the series. Love this freaking cover. Not a bad debut novel from Alwyn Hamilton. Congrats, girl. Good job. Comment down below. Let me know what you thought of this book. If you liked it, if you disliked it, what you liked about it. Did you like that she was a Demji? Did you like when they get to the Rebel Prince's encampment? Did you like how the Norsham situation was handled? Like, I just really want to know your opinions on this, and if I'm alone in being bothered by some of these things. Hit like if you liked this video. Hit subscribe if you really liked it, and I will talk to you guys next time. Thanks so much for watching. Bye. What are traveling people who sell things called in the ancient lands? Merchants. Thank you.